Okay guys, here's a short movie on how to make a lemon tart. Here's a good example of a lemon tart there in the picture. It's a reasonably sort of a simple yet complex dessert. Here we are starting the process with the sweet pastry. We've got a video clip on how to make sweet pastry on the blog. You can have a look at it there. It's made by the creaming method. You'll notice that when I started rolling out the pastry, I took a slab or a slice of the pastry from the block in the background there. I've started to roll it out and around, and I've rolled it to about 4 millimeters thick. You want to do this in a cool environment, otherwise it becomes very difficult to work with. Placing the flan ring over the pastry and leaving about a 3 centimeter ring of pastry around the outside of the flan. It should be high enough for the walls. There's no need to grease or flour the ring if you're using sably pastry, as it'll easily pull away later on. If you choose to use a pastry with a lower fat content, you'll probably need to grease and flour it. You'll notice that as I lift the flan ring and I'm pushing down the pastry into it. This technique's quite common. One of the key factors in a good lemon tart is having the perfect right angle pastry. It's well covered, and you can see in the demonstration there we're trying to aim for that. You can also take maybe like a plastic mould that often we'll mould a mousse in, and you run that around the outside as well, and that just helps square up those edges. So, or even a ramekin works just as fine. So the pastry's quite soft now, so we need to put it into the fridge. It's not shown on the clip. You need to put it in the fridge for, or even the freezer, for a good 20 to 30 minutes. Once it comes out of the freezer, we can then place in the blind baking paper, and in this case I tend to use tinfoil as it moulds well into the sides of the wall. If you use sometimes some of the greaseproof papers, that can be sharp on the edges and it can cut into the walls and form cracks, and it would be quite a disastrous result if that happened. Filling it with the beans, and it's now ready to be what we call blind baked. It's going into an oven around 180 to 290, and it needs to be reasonably hot just to set that pastry initially. Notice there's not too much overhang on that pastry. After it's been about 10 minutes, you can remove the beans. You notice that the pastry's actually set a little bit. Here we have the filling for the lemon tart, being the egg yolks, or whole eggs, sorry, sugar and lemon juice. The lemon juice will vary just depending really upon the type of lemon. So sometimes the recipe calls for 4, but you might need 5, so it will pay to taste it. And at the same time we can have the cream infusing on the stove with the lemon zest, getting lots of oil out of the zest and a lot of flavour. If we have a look at that flan there, we can see that it's quite golden. It's got to be very well cooked, the pastry, so it's nice and brown all over. It's quite a tricky thing to do. And it's at this point that you can patch any little holes that you may have, or you can patch them earlier even, but this is your last chance to patch any little imperfections that may be in the pastry. Of course, putting a thin liquid into the pastry, if there are any cracks, you'll soon know. The filling just simply leaks out and burns and makes a mess, and yeah, that's not a good result. A little bit of an insurance policy here. What we're doing is we're just placing a bit of egg wash onto the flan, and that's going to go back into the oven and just bake on. That'll sort of help seal any minor cracks that there may be. We're talking about hairline cracks really, but quite small. Now it's important to note here, guys, that the oven, when we're blind baking, is at 180. Once we remove those beans, you want to turn it down to say maybe 170. Once you start seeing colour happen on the pastry, you want to start allowing the oven to what we call fall or drop. So start reducing the temperature down to that sort of 115, 120 mark. The ideal thing here is that when the pastry is golden all over and you're returning it back to the oven, that the oven should be around that 120 mark. If we place our filling in when the oven's too hot, we're going to have a big problem and it's going to overcook. So I've just poured the warm cream over the sugar, egg and lemon juice mix, and you can at this stage taste it just to make sure the acidity levels are correct. This mix is then placed back into the pot. and we're going to slightly cook it out. You don't have to do this, but what this will do is mean that the filling won't separate out later on. You could just simply pass that mix now and pour it in. That's an option, and I guess for you it's your personal choice whether you want to do that or not. And we place it back on the heat and lightly cook it out. We don't actually thicken it at all, we just wait until we see a little bit of steam coming off the mix. That's when we know it's ready. If you overcook the mix, you'll start setting some of the egg on the stove top, and you'll pour the filling into the tart, and no matter what you do, it'll never ever set. So we're just warming the mix through here on the stove, and that can be done over a reasonably high heat. I think in the next clip here we've got a picture of what happens if you overcook it, and you can actually see it's curdled or split. If you do this, really your only hope is to maybe add a couple of raw eggs to the mix and put it back in the oven to set. So I've just warmed the mix here, and I'm passing it to remove the seeds and bits of zest, and I've got the filling there. Taking a wee ladle, I'm removing the froth. If there's a little bit of excess froth on your tart once it's been baked, you chill it in the fridge and then just place some Glad wrap over it, and that will help, and then pull it away, and that will help remove any froth that may be on that surface there. So you want it like that. That goes back into the oven, and we pour the filling in as high as we can get it, obviously before it leaks. There we go. It's fairly high, you can just see over that point there. It's going to go in the oven, and it will take anywhere from, say, 25 being the shortest to maybe 45-50 minutes to cook. See, it's just starting to set around the edges there. I'm just wobbling it, and you can just notice, yep, it's starting to move towards the centre, and here it is later on. It's cooked. This took about 30 minutes. We'll place it in the fridge and allow it to set for a couple of hours. We can then trim off the excess crust, and you can do that with a pair of scissors or a very, very sharp knife. Here we are, just going to cut a portion of the tart from the centre out using a very thin knife. I've got my favourite knife there. Was once a serrated knife, but is no longer. A filleting knife is also very, very good for this, or one of the thin French cook's Victorinox knives is good, but don't use any of the typical French knives. So I've cut a portion. Every time I cut, I wipe, and you'll notice here I'm just cleaning up the sides, sort of in a brushing technique with the sides, and that keeps a beautiful look on it. There we go, and that goes onto a plate, and it can be garnished as appropriate. And the next shot here, you'll see a bit of footage of, I'm just showing the whole tart here. You'll actually see a little bit of footage, or a clip again, of a caramelised tart. It's optional if you choose to do so. Hope that helps you out.